So, hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio Reading and for my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited to be joined by one of the stars of Wentworth Prison. She is amazing. It is, of course, Kate Jenkinson. Thank you for joining me, Kate. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on your show. I think it's really wonderful what you're doing. And so it's lovely to be a part of it today.
Now, obviously, the world we live in has been completely mad bonkers for the last couple of years. How have you coped with it all? How are you finding it all at the moment? Because obviously you're over in Australia, so how is it?
Yeah. Um, oh gosh, it's not an easy question to ask, is it? It's so I mean, it's a 2.5 year question in the process now. I think I probably experienced both spectrums of emotion, and coping and sort of, I guess, situation dealing with this virus. When it first hit Australia, I think everybody was quite lazy about how to tackle it. I think we, like perhaps most of the world, thought that it wasn't going to affect us, especially being down in Australia on an island, essentially. We didn't think that it was going to turn into what it turned into. And so it was sort of a really kind of a back burner problem in the news, at least. And then all of a sudden, everything was shutting down. We couldn't go to work anymore. People were losing their jobs, and it became a very real reality. For me personally, I guess that the first year, 2019, and the first half of actually pretty much all of 2020, even though it was very much, an issue that I could see permeating the entire world, I was personally incredibly lucky that I was able to continue working. We did have to shut down filming from Wentworth for a couple of months. But after that, we started again and we were able to shoot the entire series. And then I went on to shoot another series after that. So in terms of my employment and my livelihood, the things that were compromised for so many people, fortunately, it wasn't the case for me. So at least I had a distraction. I had something to do. So that was really welcome. But then in 2021, the year that we were all so hopeful for, I think that ended up turning out for me the way that a lot of people had to deal with in 2020. So there wasn't a lot of work. I had to sort of really bunker down, and travel was off the cards. I hadn't seen my family in a while. So I think I really got a taste of COVID in 2021. And yeah, look, it's a real mixed bag. I mean, I feel, coming from someone who was in Melbourne at the time, I was living in Melbourne throughout pretty much the entire lockdown. And Melbourne, as it turns out, was the most locked down city in the entire world, which is incredible. It's so hard to sort of verbalize how it makes you feel. I mean, on one hand, I guess I'm very grateful that we sort of had to endure such draconian lockdowns, because, the death rates were pretty low. But then now we're in the situation where, we've opened up again. People have had the chance to get vaccinated if that's what they wanted to do. And we're open again. And now COVID is absolutely decimating us all again. So on one hand, I kind of think it's great that we all had the chance to get vaccinated and lock down and keep people safe. But on the same hand, it's like, well, was it worth it, given what's happening in our country now? So that was a very long-winded answer of saying I still don't quite know how to feel about it. I think I kind of feel on a very mild level, we're all experiencing a little bit of PTSD. I certainly feel that way. I don't really know how to completely answer that question, but a very mixed bag, which I'm sure everybody feels that way. I guess it makes you very happy for your health, and grateful, at least for myself personally, that none of my family were affected in a bad way.
And I mean, you said obviously just then that obviously you obviously started off in Melbourne. You're now based in Queensland, I believe. And I mean,
I am.
was that quite a stressful thing to do during a pandemic, to move?
Yes, it was. It was actually. My partner and I have recently had baby, and that in itself was incredibly challenging because he, up until about 4 months of age, he wasn't able to meet any of his family because Nathan's family are here in Queensland and my family are over in Perth, and travel was not an option. So yeah, he still hasn't met my side of the family, and we wanted to come up to Queensland to be close to family, but obviously that was, that was just an impossibility, unfortunately. So for the first 4 months of his life, we were incredibly isolated and restricted in what we were allowed to do. Even, his appointments and those kinds of things, my partner wasn't allowed to come to those. So that was a real challenge. I think when you have a baby, you soon realize that you just want help. You want people around you, and preferably your own family, to do that help. And so it was very, very challenging not to have that. But again, Nathan and I chose to get vaccinated, and very grateful that we could do that. So we can travel, and we're now in Queensland and close to family, which makes all of 2021 and 2020 seem worth it.
Now, I often ask my guests, whether they, over the course of the last couple of years, have learned any new skills or done anything different. I suppose being a mum is something that you could class as a new skill.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I've learned how to survive on very little sleep. I wish I could say that I had developed some kind of skill in the 2 years that we were locked down, but no. I did actually write a book. I wrote an ebook, which I'm hoping to release sometime in the near future. So I did do that. I discovered that I'm a somewhat competent writer. I wouldn't say good, but we'll go with competent. Yeah, I learned how to survive on very little sleep. I learned how to change a nappy in the pitch black. I'd say that there's some good life skills there.
I would say they're pretty impressive. So well done on those.
Thank you.
Now, I mean, for you, where did the love of acting first come from? Do you remember kind of where the bug bit you?
I think I was bitten before I realised that I was bitten. I'm sure my mum would probably agree that I was showing signs of going down that path. I used to be obsessed with watching television, but not really for the story. I would be obsessed with the actors, I suppose, and I would kind of try and mimic them. I would sort of watch a toothpaste commercial or something like that, and then I'd race off to the mirror and repeat what I'd just seen on TV. And I remember as a sort of a preteen, I suppose, I would watch TV and, watching a show like ER or something and go, oh, that's what I want to be. I want to be a doctor. And then Law and Order would come on and I go, no, I want to be a lawyer. And that would, that would be a cycle for a while. And then as I was older, I realized that I just wanted to be the person that got to be all of those things. So I think it was sort of much like a virus. I think it was sort of permeating through my entire body from a young age. And I remember distinctly when I was, I think 16, I was at a friend's place we were watching Romeo and Juliet, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. And there was a scene between Claire Danes and Miriam Margolyes. They were just doing their thing. And I remember watching Claire Danes' performance and thinking, oh gosh, she's so wonderful. I wish I could do that. And literally in the same breath, I thought, I can do that. Hang on, I can do that. And that truly was a sort of an aha moment where I thought, hang on, I can do that if I want. And so that's sort of where it began for me.
I mean, a lot of actors will say that, they either prefer the live or aspect even, or, you know, kind of the sort of doing the sort of the TV shows and films. Is there one that you prefer, or do you love a bit of both? You know, what for you is kind of the main passion?
I definitely love a bit of both. I really, really love a bit of both. Theatre for sure was my first love. I was a dancer from probably ages 5 to 15. I did it quite religiously. It was very much a passion of mine, and so I think I cut my teeth in front of an audience. And when I started acting, it was mainly stage. I studied at the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts in WA, where I grew up, Western Australia. And at that point, the acting course was very much geared towards theatre training, which I loved. So very much cut my teeth on the stage. And there is something about it that I think will probably always be my first and true love. But unfortunately, it's just so theatre logistically is just one of those things that's incredibly hard to schedule in to an actor's life. I mean, if you're lucky, you get offered to do theatre work, which I have been incredibly fortunate to be offered wonderful roles. The downside is that often with theatre, they need to book you really far in advance so they can print their posters and print their flyers and advertise it and that kind of thing. So oftentimes they will want to book you, say, a year in advance, which can be great, but it also then precludes you from any other job that might come up in that time, which may, which may be more suitable to you at that time. So yeah, unfortunately, theatre is a really tricky one to schedule, and especially now with a child, theatre hours are less forgiving, I suppose, than a TV. But I think there's real pluses and minuses to both. I've been working in TV for so long now that I've forgotten how wonderful theatre is. I think it's been over 10 years since I've done a theatre show, which is really sad. But no, I truly love both. Unfortunately, just haven't had the opportunity to be on stage in a very long time. But hopefully, maybe 2022, we can change that.
Fingers crossed, fingers crossed.
Yeah, maybe.
Now, you have had the pleasure of doing so many amazing shows and so many amazing roles. I mean, just some of the projects you've done, Doctor, which is fantastic, Offspring, House Husbands, Rush, City Homicide, just to name a few. Of course, Wentworth Prison. I mean, for you, and we will talk about Wentworth Prison, but for you, is there a favourite project you've been a part of over the years? Or you know, is there something that you haven't done that you would love to do going forward?
I feel like all of the jobs I've done have been like partners, you know, romantic relationships. And at the time that you're in them, they all seem like your favorite. And you always think like, oh, this is the one, this is my favorite one. And then, you know, sometimes you can look back with slightly different eyes. And certainly I think I can see all of the jobs that I've had have been wonderful for varying reasons. And there's really, I can't think of many, if any, jobs that I've done that I look back at and think I hated that experience. In fact, I haven't. I've really, you know, gotten something from all of the jobs that I've done. I think I do have there's a special place in my heart for the project that I filmed in Los Angeles. I did a sitcom with my friend Rebel Wilson over there, and that I loved for so many reasons. It was a dream of mine to be in a sitcom. I sort of have always had a fondness for comedy. I think it's my preferred genre, certainly to play in as well as to watch. And I always dreamed of being on a sitcom, I guess, and to have that dream realized was a real thrill. It also meant a total change of scenery for me. I got to move to LA, live in LA. I got to shoot on the Warner Brothers backlot, which is just so nostalgic and iconic. That's where Friends was filmed, and Two and a Half Men, and Big Bang Theory, and all of those sort of iconic shows. So it was just wonderful to walk around that place and go, oh my God, that's Ashton Kutcher. Oh my God, that's Kaylee Cuoco. And I'm here too. So that was a real thrill. I loved the content of the show. I loved the other cast members. So that was a real thrill. And I loved my character on that show. So that certainly will always have a very special place for me. Wentworth, of course, because it was the first time I was a part of a show that really had a following, and I could actually see that the work we were doing had an effect on people, and a good effect. So that, certainly Wentworth, I really appreciated for that reason, and also to take a character over 6 seasons and watch them go in every single direction that a character could possibly go. That was very rewarding. And then I suppose Amazing Grace, which I filmed last year, was very special because it was the first time that I was the lead of an ensemble, and I had a very big responsibility in terms of, if I didn't work in the show, then the whole show wasn't going to work. So having that responsibility and that workload was new and incredibly rewarding. Yeah, I mean, all of them. I think I could list all of the shows and find something to absolutely adore about them. But I've been very lucky. I've had some wonderful, wonderful jobs and great experiences. Let's hope it continues.
No, of course, going back to Wentworth, because I say it is loved so much. And I mean, when you first, because obviously you went into it in season 4, obviously the show had been going for a few years. Was it tricky to go into the show and sort of kind of getting used to the fact that obviously, people already knew of the show, and did you know how popular it was at that point?
I didn't know it was that I knew that it was doing okay. I guess anything that gets a 4th season is obviously doing pretty well. And I knew that it had been received well in Australia, and I did know that it had somewhat of a following overseas, but I really had no idea just how popular it was. I had watched the show before I was in it, and I certainly loved it. I thought it was brilliant. But to answer your question, I think, I guess, yeah, there certainly is a responsibility in joining something that is already really good and working. But I think perhaps because I was just a little bit undereducated on just how popular it was, maybe that was a blessing, because I didn't dwell on the fact that, I better not stuff it up. I kind of just was able to go in and play like any other project. But I did have an advantage, I suppose, because I had watched the show. Going into a show that's already established, you can watch what's already happened before you, and you can kind of get a really good feel for what the tone is, and how to pitch things, and especially because my character I knew was going to be very much linked to B. Smith, I could very much tailor my performance to what I thought would best serve this existing show. So yeah, it has advantages and disadvantages as well. But I guess fortunately for me, I didn't really contemplate the disadvantages. I just focused on the joy of being able to join an ensemble and a show that was already so well and brilliantly established.
I mean, it must be amazing to have been a part of a show that had such an amazing, female cast, obviously, sort of really at the forefront of the storylines from, obviously a female prison, to do something that, because you don't get all that many shows where majority of the lead cast are all females. So that must have been so much fun to be a part of that.
Yes. And again, it's sort of one of those things that I was aware of, but whenever I get reminded of it, I kind of think, oh yeah, it is an all-female, pretty much all-female ensemble, or certainly female-dominated ensemble. Because when I went into Wentworth, it's just, okay, this is a new project, and look at all of these exceptional actors around me. And yes, I guess you're aware that they're mainly female, but you don't really think about it because it's just like, oh my God, that's Pamela Ray. Oh my gosh, that's Danielle Cormack. I get to play with such extraordinary actors, I suppose I didn't care whether they were female or not. They were just that good. And it was such an honor and thrill to be able to work with them. But yeah, sometimes I have to remind myself, yeah, it was pretty kind of rare and pioneering in a way to have such a successful show be mainly female driven, well, certainly female driven. But I guess, you know, Prisoner was doing it back in the 70s whenever the show was originally made. So it's proof that women rule.
Now, of course, you know, the show, say, hugely popular all around the world. And I mean, the thing that I mean, I say, being a fan myself of the show, I didn't even realize that there was such a following online. I mean, so for example, when I posted about the fact I'm interviewing you for my show, the response from people that I don't even know, who are just going, we love Kate, and I'm also due to interview Kate Atkinson, who of course plays Vera.
Wow.
And just it went mad. I mean, as well, earlier last year, actually, I interviewed Pamela Rabe. Just people go mad whenever you mention that you're interviewing someone from Wentworth. People just love the show so much and take it to their hearts. So that must be such an honor for you guys.
Oh, absolutely. Because, you know, I guess it's so rare for an actor to be a part of something that has such global acceptance and embracing. You know, I can't think of how many shows I've been in over the years, but many. And of all of those shows, only one. I mean, maybe, yeah, Offspring certainly had a big following as well. But really, it's only been Wentworth that has had a worldwide kind of following. And so it's really rare. You know, you can work your entire career for 20 years or however long and really never be in a hit show. And not that it's about being in a hit show, but it's certainly nice to know that the work you're doing is being seen and people are appreciating it and liking it, and they want more. That's really lovely and rare. So it is always still a trip to know that people are thinking about you and know who you are and like your work and want to follow what you do in your career and online. And, you know, every now and again you'll walk down the street and someone will be like, Allie. And so it's nice to be reminded that what you did meant something to people.
And I mean, the great thing with Allie as well is that obviously over the years, you know, so much happened to her. She obviously was in love, lost her love, you know, ended up in a wheelchair. So many dramas that happened through her time. I mean, poor woman is sort of one of the things we have to say. But for you, when you're kind of taking on these storylines and these sort of parts of the character, I mean, what sort of research do you have to do? What's the sort of the homework like to get it right?
Well, I guess it's as extensive as you want it to be. For Allie, going into the series in season 4, she wasn't a legacy character, say like B. Smith or Vera Bennett, Joan Ferguson. They were all legacy characters from Prisoner. So they had a history that a character like Allie didn't have. She was a completely new fictional character only created for Wentworth. So I guess in a way it was sort of liberating because I didn't have to, I guess I sort of didn't have to worry about paying homage to, you know, whoever had done the character before me. And in terms of research, I suppose what I knew about Allie and what her character had been through and what she was going to go through, you know, it was pretty dark. She was a prostitute and addicted to drugs, homeless at one point, you know, impressionable to the point that she'd joined this vigilante gang with Kaz and had allowed herself to do all sorts of illegal activities and has wound up in jail. You know, an addict through and through. And so I certainly explored everything that kind of made up who Allie was on paper, you know, the addiction, the prostitution, etc. But I suppose because I knew that storyline for Allie was that she was going to fall in love with B and that B was going to fall in love with her. I felt that it was important to acknowledge that she had all of this history with drug abuse, etc. But I felt that it was really important that I explore what made her lovable, because if B Smith was going to fall in love with her, and I knew from watching the show how iconic of a character B was, so I really chose to focus not so much on her dark and sordid history, and more about what was it in the present that made Allie intoxicating and lovable for B, because certainly B Smith was not going to fall in love with some like drug-addled junkie prostitute who just, was that sort of stereotypical version of that person. I wanted to create a character who was beautiful and lovable and sweet and safe, but also was a prostitute and addicted to drugs and all that kind of thing. So I guess I chose to focus more on her light than I did on her darkness.
And I mean, obviously, over the years, one of the things I think people loved about the show is just how, there was so many, scenes that were very dramatic, fights and all of that sort of, deaths and all that. When you're filming those, what kind of, I mean, I imagine you have to be so coordinated, get it so right, because, someone could get hurt, if it goes a little bit wrong, I imagine.
Oh, yes, definitely. And there have been some injuries. I think I inflicted some of them, certainly on Tammy McIntosh. She got a blood nose courtesy of me at one point. Sorry, Tammy. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You do have to be incredibly diligent and rehearsed and choreographed and all that kind of thing. We had an extraordinary stunt team that we worked with on Wentworth the entire 9 seasons. So fortunately, we had stunt doubles to do some of the crazy things the crazier or more dangerous things for us. However, though, we did have to do most of the choreography for the fights and that kind of thing, because it has to be our faces that are seen. And so yeah, you have to be incredibly careful, and it is exhausting. I think there's a famous fight between the Freak and myself and some other inmates at the beginning of season 5, which is just a brilliant fight scene. And I think that took all day to film in the freezing cold and mud. It is physically challenging and mentally challenging, but it's sort of worth it when you see the result.
And I mean, when the show, obviously, when it was announced that obviously season 9 would be the last season, how was that for you? I mean, I imagine you maybe sort of knew it was coming, but when you have to say goodbye to a show that has been a huge part of your life for so many years, how do you deal with that? How was that?
It's, I mean, bittersweet, of course, and bittersweet for many reasons. I mean, for me, I could have continued working on Wentworth. I would have signed up for another 10 seasons happily. It was, filmed in Melbourne, which I love living in that city. It was a beautiful ensemble of people. I happily would have worked with them for the rest of my life. The character I have grown very much attached to. For very selfish reasons, I could have kept that. I would have happily kept that job forever if it, had turned into some kind of a serial, like a Grey's Anatomy that just goes on and on and on. I would have signed up for sure. But also I'm glad and proud that Wentworth decided to end, because you can't, I don't think you can keep telling a story forever. Well, you can, but I think it's just going to invariably at some point get repetitive. And I like that Wentworth decided to end it at a point where it was still good and still popular, and being able to leave people wanting more is very rare, I think. Very often people will get to the end of a series and go, I'm over this. And I think mostly people were not quite over Wentworth, which is nice. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I guess I could have gone on forever, but I'm also very glad that it ended when it did. It's always nice to be able to explore other projects, but having said that, it is a job that I will miss, I think, forever.
I mean, the good thing is Ali didn't die, so we
Reboot.
potentially one day. Would you like to revisit that? Do you think if the opportunity came up?
Oh, I mean, yes, yeah, I would. I would always be interested to see what was created or presented. I mean, the writing team have proven that they've been able to create incredible storylines for 9 seasons, which I think is just kind of an impossibly rare feat. So yeah, I mean, if anyone could do it, it would be that writing team, that creative team. But I think that the show ended perfectly, and I'd be hesitant to revisit something that I think has nicely closed this chapter. I mean, the show in itself is a reboot, so maybe in 20-30 years they might remake another version of it. I mean, it's a brilliant drama concept. Put a whole bunch of women in a pen and watch them fight for survival. It's brilliant. So I would have no. I would love to see another reboot in 20 years time. But I think Allie's journey is over. At least she had such an epic trajectory. I'm not sure that there could be much more for her to explore.
And then, like I said, obviously, she didn't die. Were you happy that she didn't die? Because that could have been the thing where the writers decided to kill off half the cast. That could have been you. So are you glad that she still lives?
This is a twofold question. I am glad that she lived, but I did want her to die. I pitched for her to die. I asked the writers and the producers if I begged her to die, basically, because I thought the final script as written, where she finds the phone and she gets squished and she sees B. I thought that would in one way be the happiest ending for Allie if she were to go up to Bally Heaven and be with B and live happily ever after in the ether. So I did. I pitched hard for her to come out of that stretcher dead, but the writing team and the producing team, they suggested to me that if that was the case, then the final sort of montage of the final scene would be about grief, because of course all of the characters would be devastated that Allie was dead. And so that final moment would be about grief as opposed to hope. And so they wanted Allie to live, not only to be able to deliver that phone and give potential freedom to Ruby and Rita, but also I guess as a thematic beacon of hope. And that even someone like Allie, who was so close to death and who mentally, I think, was ready to die, that there is hope, and that she may hopefully at some point find happiness and resolve all of the trauma that she has been through. So there was a part of me that wanted her to die, because I think that Wentworth does main character deaths so well. I wanted to have my own slice of that. But no, I guess I am glad that she lived, if not only for the fact that I do think that that final image of Wentworth, where all of the family are together and there is a whiff of hope for them all. I do appreciate that she is alive for that moment.
Now, I mean, going forward, what projects have you got that you're working on? What are you excited for going forward?
Well, I mean, motherhood is my ongoing full-time job at the moment, and it's incredibly gratifying and incredibly difficult. and I'm really loving it. And fortunately, it's come at a time where I have a lot of time. I don't have a project to work on at the moment. I think I'm going to be revisiting a show at the end of this year, 5 Bedrooms, which is on Peacock, NBC Peacock, I think. And that's a really wonderful show. Probably one of my favorite characters, I think, that I've ever played. So that should be fun. And I think that's something that we'll be filming at the end of this year. But until then, I'm not sure. I've got a clean slate. There's some things that potentially are going to come to pass, but we'll see. I mean, I feel like I've been in the sort of lockdown of Wentworth for 6 years now, I suppose. It's nice to be free from that contract, to go, okay, anything is possible, but also to have some time off with my son and just focus on being a mum for a bit and not an actor, which has sort of taken up my entire consciousness for the last 20 years, I suppose. So it has been nice to just have one focus. But having said that, I'm looking forward to finally being on set again. It feels like it's been a long time, and I'm excited to get there again, hopefully with a comedy. Let's do a comedy. It feels like it's been way too long since I've done a comedy.
Now, I just want to say it's been a pleasure talking to you, but before we go, is there any messages that you'd like to give to the people that are listening in hospital, who obviously aren't having the best of times at the moment? Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
I can only imagine that it must be infinitely harder to be going through this whole pandemic in hospital. I mean, it was hard enough to be going through it outside of hospital, so it must be a special kind of difficult to endure this in hospital. I'm incredibly empathetic to you all. I hope that you are finding ways to cope and find little glimmers of happiness. And I'm glad that you have shows like this to keep you entertained. Find good shows to binge watch. Wentworth, I can recommend. You've got 9 seasons of a hell of a lot of drama. So if you've got time on your hands in your hospital bed, tune into some juicy drama or some entertaining comedies to get you through the time. And my thoughts are with you, and I hope that we can all find some way through this incredibly different, challenging, hopefully never to be repeated time. So I'm sending love and well wishes.
Thank you so much, Kate. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Of course, keep safe, and you are welcome back anytime.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting to you too.